But the day of judgment is going to come, and it's going to be very serious, because it's going to cause chaos, especially if most of the people who are hauled into the courts are unemployed, because the economy is in a very serious predicament. And that is where the problem is, because there are these much bigger issues which are actually behind this book, and that's about the extent of the powers of local government officials, who often are considered by some, and I'm not naming any names, I'm just making that observation, that they over-egg the costs they seek by doubling the sums of money for the work done, because they're saying, oh well, we had to do this extra work, and the judge will say, no, that's what you get paid for anyway. So why are you claiming it twice? I mean, I've had that has occurred on quite a few occasions in some of the cases I've been involved in. And I have to say the judges, if it is brought to their attention, will generally speaking identify whether in fact the costs are outrageously out of order. I mean, some costs applications are ridiculous. They are an affront, frankly, to the way in which justice should be administered. Now, the problem is that most people won't know about any of this, because although the courts are open, you don't see any of it. If they were filmed, it would be slightly different. But of course, at the moment, it's very difficult to get a lot of the information out. Sadly, then, it remains a position that costs so often outstrip any sums of money sought, or what orders you get, say, for the dispute that you are trying to have resolved. And it does make, frankly, a mockery of what we call open justice to a certain extent, because the difficulty is that there are people milking the system. And I've seen it, and I know who they are, and they know I know who they are, because I've made the points in court. But I do think it's an important point to bear in mind, because the difficulty we have is that going to law is the preserve of the rich, except, of course, the problems which the council taxpayer will face. Now, let me conclude with these words that say it's clear to me that the book, this one, will be highly unpopular with many officials. And because it doesn't aim to replace professional legal advice, and I've said, and I will repeat, that you should always seek professional help, legal advice and assistance in dealing with a local authority, because they have a huge organisation behind them. They have the state behind them, and therefore you've got to know what you're doing. It's feared, therefore, by me and I think many others, that the only real solution is a root and branch reform, which will bring post-COVID, which will obviously bring the post-COVID chaos which we've got to the justice system. Once the tax arrears and the cost claims are looked at by the courts, it will obviously cause us a really serious problem for the future. It hasn't even been thought of yet, but when it does, we will have a problem. And it's going to be a lot of people. We're not talking of a few people here. We're talking of a very large number of people who've probably already fallen into arrears, and they could find themselves with very, very high costs. And sometimes their costs will be way beyond any scale which is reasonable. And that's where the problem is. So, Paul, you're very brave to take these people on. It is an interesting book. I'm grateful that you sent it to me for me to have a look at. Bear in mind that it is not the answer, though, to any individual problem. You need to go and see a lawyer. The date of publication of this paperback is cited as at October. I'll just show it again very briefly. There's the front, there's a little spine on the back, and then there's some blurb. Then you can see obviously some pictures on the front. Let me just show you some of the information. This is a chapter 9 on Barnet Borough Council. I am mentioning a couple of names. I'm not going into any detail in case any of this information is for any reason wrong, but I think what we've got here from what I've been through with this book, it does try to set out how the procedure should actually work. Whether it does work or whether it doesn't work is going to be a problem. I have to say as a final point that I question whether the people who are administering this in the court service understand themselves what they're doing. And I think that is where I have my biggest concern, because I still believe that the concept of the council tax is actually, it's with us at the moment, but I do not see how it can survive if it's going to continually go up and up and up each year with these severe sanctions that people have. Because at some stage you'll have to draw a line and say, well, there are plenty of people who can pay it, but there are a very large number who can't. So Paul, thank you very much for sending me the book. It doesn't really answer very much, but I think for those people who have seen the work of the Child Poverty Action Group, they will be aware that there are a number of organisations that can help. And I hope that this book will help one or two people, but do get professional legal advice. Thank you, Paul. Bye-bye.